Chosen ones, it's time to stop ignoring God. His voice is calling you now, clear as day, urging you to listen or face regret. This isn't a whisper in the wind, it's a divine command to hush your doubts, silence your distractions, and hear what's been prepared for you. You're not here by chance. Your soul has been guided to this moment, and what you're about to hear will shift everything. God is speaking, and He's saying, keep your mouth shut and listen. Are you ready to hear His truth? The world is loud. It screams with chaos, endless notifications, opinions, and fears pulling you in every direction. But God's voice cuts through it all. He's not shouting to compete with the noise. He's waiting for you to quiet your heart. You've been running, chasing answers, maybe even questioning why things haven't fallen into place. The truth? You've been too busy talking, planning, worrying to hear Him. Right now, He's asking you to stop, to listen, because in His silence, there's a plan unfolding that's bigger than anything you've imagined. Think about Moses at the burning bush. He wasn't looking for God that day. He was tending sheep, caught up in the grind. But when God called, Moses stopped. He listened, and that moment changed his life, his people, and history itself. You're standing at your own burning bush right now. God's voice isn't in the fire or the storm, it's in the still, small whisper that demands your full attention. Will you pause long enough to hear it? This message isn't about guilt, it's about opportunity. God's not here to scold you for ignoring Him. He's here to pull you into alignment with your purpose. Every time you've felt lost, every moment you've questioned your path, God was speaking. Maybe you brushed it off as coincidence or drowned it out with doubt. But His voice never stopped. It's been there, guiding you through every storm, every heartbreak, every victory you didn't even realize was His hand at work. Now, let's make this real. Pause for a second. Hit that like button to anchor this moment. It's a signal to yourself that you're ready to listen. And if this resonates, subscribe to join thousands of chosen ones walking this path together. Your support keeps this truth alive, and if you feel called to give through super thanks, know that it helps spread this message to souls who need it. Every bit matters, and I'm grateful for you being here. God's voice isn't abstract, it's specific. He's telling you to stop chasing what the world says you need: money, status, validation, and start hearing what He's already promised. Look at Elijah. He stood on a mountain, expecting God in the wind, the earthquake, the fire. But God came in a gentle whisper. That's where the real power is. You don't need to scream for answers. You need to get quiet. Shut out the noise. Let His words sink in. When you listen, something shifts. Your perspective changes. The things you thought were impossible start to look like stepping stones. God's not asking you to figure it all out. He's asking you to trust His voice. Think about the disciples in the boat, panicking as the storm raged. Jesus was right there, sleeping, unafraid. When they finally turned to Him, He spoke, and the storm stopped. Your storms are no different. His voice is the calm you've been searching for. You're a chosen one. That's not a title you earned, it's who you are. God picked you before you took your first breath. But being chosen doesn't mean life is easy. It means you're called to listen harder, to trust deeper. The world will try to drown out His voice with fear, doubt, even success. But none of that compares to what God's saying right now. He's telling you your time is coming, your breakthrough is near, but you have to listen. Let's talk about what happens when you ignore Him. Regret isn't just a feeling, it's a missed moment, a missed calling, a missed miracle. Think about Jonah. God told him to go to Nineveh, but he ran. The result? A storm, a whale, and a hard lesson. God didn't abandon Jonah, but Jonah's refusal to listen cost him peace. Don't let that be you. The path God's calling you to might feel daunting, but ignoring it will cost you more. Your heart knows this truth. You've felt it, that pull, that quiet nudge telling you there's more to your story. That's God. He's not distant. He's not silent. He's speaking through every closed door, every unexpected blessing, every moment you've felt His presence. Stop dismissing it. Stop explaining it away. Right now, declare you're ready. Type 777 inches the comments as a sign you're opening your heart to His voice. Let the heavens see your faith. Listening isn't passive. It's an act of courage. It means trusting God's timing when the world says, hurry. It means believing His promises when everything looks impossible. Look at Abraham. God told him to leave his home, his comfort, for a land he didn't know. Abraham didn't argue. He listened. And because he did, nations were born from his faith. Your obedience to God's voice will birth things you can't yet see. God's not asking for perfection. He's asking for your attention. You don't have to have all the answers or a spotless past. He's speaking to you as you are, flaws, doubts, and all. The question is, will you hear Him? Will you let His voice guide you past the noise, past the fear, into the life He's designed for you? This is your moment to say yes. The world will keep shouting. It'll tell you to hustle harder, to doubt yourself, to chase what's temporary. But God's voice is different. It's steady, it's sure, it's the anchor in every storm. When you listen, you'll find clarity. You'll see the next step, even if it's just one. And that step will lead you to a life of purpose, peace, and power you didn't know was possible. Think about Mary, the mother of Jesus, a young girl, ordinary by the world's standards, yet chosen for something extraordinary. When the angel spoke, she didn't demand proof or argue with God's plan. She listened. She said, "Let it be to me according to your word." That simple act of listening changed the world. Your willingness to hear God could do the same. You're not just another soul wandering through life. You're marked by God, set apart for a reason. His voice is your compass, guiding you through every trial, every dream, every moment of uncertainty. When you listen, you align with His purpose. You step into the fullness of who you were created to be. And trust me, that version of you is unstoppable. God's speaking about your future. He's telling you the struggles you're facing aren't the end of your story. They're the setup for your breakthrough. Every time you've felt stuck, every time you've faced a wall, God's been whispering, "This is not your end." His voice is the key to unlocking what's next. Don't ignore it. Don't let doubt or distraction steal what He's prepared. Let's pause again. If this message is stirring something in you, take a moment to support this work. Your super thanks, no matter the size, helps carry this truth to others who need to hear it. And if you're ready to walk this journey with other chosen ones, hit subscribe. Together, we're amplifying God's voice in a world that needs it. Now, let's get deeper. God's voice isn't just about guidance, it's about transformation. When you listen, you're not just hearing words, you're receiving power. Look at David, a shepherd boy, overlooked by everyone, yet God spoke to him. When he listened, he went from tending sheep to slaying giants. That's what happens when you tune into God. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. You might be thinking, "But I don't hear Him clearly." That's okay. God doesn't always speak in thunderclaps. Sometimes it's a feeling, a nudge, a moment of peace that doesn't make sense. Start small. Listen in the quiet moments. Pay attention to the patterns in your life, the doors that open, the ones that close. That's Him speaking. Trust it. Ignoring God doesn't just mean tuning Him out. It means missing the life He's calling you to. Think about the rich young ruler who asked Jesus how to gain eternal life. Jesus told him to sell everything and follow, but the man walked away, clinging to his wealth. He ignored the call, and the Bible never mentions him again. Don't let your story end like that. Listen and step into what's waiting. God's voice is your lifeline. It's the thread that pulls you through confusion, fear, even success that feels empty. When you listen, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're stepping into a life where every moment has meaning, where every challenge has a purpose. His voice is the map to a future that's bigger than your wildest dreams. Look at Esther, a young woman in a foreign land, facing impossible odds. God spoke through her circumstances, through her uncle's words, through her own courage. She listened, and a nation was saved. Your life might not feel like a kingdom-saving mission, but every time you choose to hear God, you're changing something, maybe your family, your community, or even yourself. This isn't about religion, it's about relationship. God's not a distant judge waiting to catch you slipping. He's a father, speaking to his child, guiding you to a life of purpose. When you listen, you're not just following rules. You're walking in sync with the one who created you. That's where your power lies. That's where your peace is found. You've been chosen for this moment, not tomorrow, not next year, right now. God's voice is calling you to step up, to trust, to move. The regrets of yesterday don't define you, but ignoring Him today could cost you tomorrow. Type 777 inches. The comments if you're ready to say, "I'm listening, God." Let this be your declaration that you're done running. Listening to God means letting go of control. It's scary, sure. The world tells you to grip tighter, to plan every detail. But God's saying, let go and let me lead. Think about Peter walking on water. He didn't calculate the waves. He heard Jesus say, "Come," and he stepped out. You're being called to step out too. Trust the voice, even when the waves look high. Your life is a story God's writing, and He's not done yet. Every chapter, every plot twist, every moment you thought was a dead end, He's been speaking through it all. When you listen, you see the bigger picture. You see how the pain shaped you, how the delays prepared you, how the victories were His hand at work. Don't miss the next chapter because you're too busy to hear. God's voice isn't just about what you'll gain, it's about who you'll become. The moment you start listening, you start transforming. Your fears fade, your confidence grows. You begin to walk with a certainty that shakes the world around you. People will notice. They'll see the light in your eyes, the peace in your steps, and they'll wonder what's different. This is your time, chosen one. God's speaking, and He's not vague. He's telling you to stop doubting, to stop chasing distractions, to stop ignoring the call. His voice is your guide to a life of abundance, purpose, and unshakable peace. But you have to choose to listen. Will you? Or will you let regret write the rest of your story? Let's talk about what listening looks like. It's not just sitting in silence, waiting for a booming voice. It's paying attention to the moments that feel holy, the conversation that shifts your perspective, the opportunity that comes out of nowhere, the peace that settles when you pray. That's God. He's in the details, guiding you step by step. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark when there wasn't a cloud in the sky. People mocked him, called him crazy. But Noah listened. He built, and when the rains came, he was ready. Your ark might be a dream, a decision, a leap of faith. God's telling you to build it now, even if no one else understands. Listen, and you'll be ready when the time comes. You're not alone in this. Thousands of chosen ones are hearing this message, feeling this call. If you're moved to keep this truth spreading, your super thanks, no matter how small, helps carry it further. It's a way to stand with others who are listening, who are ready to step into God's plan. And don't forget to subscribe to join this community of souls walking in faith. God's voice isn't a one-time thing. It's a lifelong conversation. The more you listen, the clearer it gets. You'll start to notice His guidance in the smallest moments, when to speak, when to wait, when to move. It's like tuning a radio. At first, it's static, but the more you adjust, the clearer the signal. Keep tuning in, and you'll hear Him like never before. Ignoring God doesn't always mean outright rebellion. Sometimes it's just distraction. You get caught up in life bills, relationships, goals, and His voice gets drowned out. But He's still speaking. He's in the quiet moments, the ones you rush past. Slow down. Listen. That's where you'll find the answers you've been searching for. Look at Samuel, a young boy asleep in the temple. God called his name, not once, but 3 times. At first, Samuel didn't recognize the voice. He thought it was Eli. But when he finally listened, when he said, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," his life changed. He became a prophet, a voice for God. Your "Speak, Lord" moment is now. Say it, and watch what happens. God's not asking you to be perfect. He's not asking you to have it all figured out. He's asking you to listen, to trust, to take the next step, even if it's small. That step could lead to a job, a relationship, a healing, a purpose you've been longing for. But you won't know until you hear Him. Don't let another day pass in silence. The world will keep trying to pull you away. It'll offer quick fixes, empty promises, distractions that feel urgent but lead nowhere. God's voice is different. It's steady, unchanging, full of truth. When you listen, you're not just hearing words. You're stepping into a life where every moment has purpose, where every challenge is a setup for a miracle. You're a chosen one, marked for greatness. But greatness doesn't come from striving. It comes from listening. God's speaking about your future, your calling, your breakthrough. He's telling you the struggles you're facing are not the end, they're the beginning of something new. Don't ignore Him. Open your heart, quiet your mind, and let His voice lead you. This is your moment. God's calling you to stop, to listen, to trust. His voice is the key to everything you've been praying for. Don't let regret steal what He's offering. Say yes to His call. Step into His plan, and watch how your life transforms when you finally hear what He's been saying all along. God's voice is your foundation, chosen one. It's not just a sound, it's a force that grounds you when everything else shakes. You've felt the world try to pull you off course, with its demands, its doubts, its endless chatter. But when you listen to Him, you find a stability nothing can break. His words are the bedrock of your purpose, the anchor that holds you steady no matter how fierce the storm. Picture Daniel in the lion's den. The world expected him to be torn apart. His enemies, his circumstances, all screamed defeat. But Daniel listened to God. He prayed, he trusted, and he walked out untouched. That's what God's voice does. It doesn't just guide you, it protects you. It turns the impossible into a testimony. Your lion's den might be a financial struggle, a broken relationship, or a dream that feels out of reach. Listen, and God will walk you through it. You've been chosen for a reason, but that doesn't mean you're exempt from trials. It means you're equipped to overcome them. God's voice isn't a distant echo. It's a living power that speaks to your situation right now. When you hear him, you're not just receiving advice. You're tapping into the strength that created the universe. That strength is in you, waiting to be activated the moment you stop and listen. Think about the walls of Jericho. Joshua didn't tear them down with weapons or strategy. God told him to march, to be silent, to trust. And when the time came to shout, those walls crumbled. Your walls, your obstacles, your fears will fall the same way, but only if you listen to his instructions, even when they don't make sense. Silence your doubts, follow his lead, watch what happens. God's not asking you to have all the answers. He's not expecting you to solve every problem on your own. He's asking you to hear him, to trust that his voice is enough. Look at Gideon, a man who saw himself as the least, the weakest. God spoke, called him a mighty warrior, and Gideon listened. That single act of obedience turned a nobody into a leader. Your identity shifts when you hear God's truth about who you are. The world will try to define you by your mistakes, your status, your past. But God's voice tells a different story. He calls you chosen, purposed, unstoppable. When you listen, you start to see yourself through his eyes. The lies you've believed, the limits you've accepted, they lose their power. You step into a truth that sets you free, a truth that reshapes your entire reality. Let's pause for a moment. If this message is hitting home, consider supporting this work with a super thanks. Your gift, big or small, helps. Spread this truth to others who need to hear God's voice. And if you're ready to stand with thousands of chosen ones, hit subscribe. Together, we're building a community that listens, trusts, and walks in God's purpose. God's voice isn't just about the big moments. It's in the everyday choices, the quiet decisions that shape your path. Think about Ruth, who chose to stay with Naomi despite an uncertain future. God spoke through her loyalty, her courage, and led her to a destiny she couldn't have imagined. Your small acts of obedience, saying no to fear, yes to faith, are where his voice becomes clear. You might feel like you've missed his call before. Maybe you've ignored that nudge, that quiet prompting to act, to change, to trust. But God's not done with you. His voice is patient, persistent. He's speaking now, calling you back to the path he's set. Like the prodigal son, you're never too far gone. Listen, and you'll find your way home to his purpose. Every time you choose to hear God, you're rewriting your story. The world wants you to believe you're stuck, that your circumstances are final. But God's voice says otherwise. He's telling you the pain you're feeling is temporary. The closed door is a detour. The dream you've buried is still alive. When you listen, you start to see his hand in every detail, turning chaos into order. Consider Paul and Silas, locked in a prison cell, beaten and bound. The world saw defeat, but they heard God. They prayed, they sang, and in the middle of the night, an earthquake shook their chains loose. That's what listening does. It breaks chains. It opens doors. It turns your darkest hour into a miracle. Whatever prison you're in, God's voice is the key to your freedom. You're not just hearing words, you're receiving a promise. God's voice carries his covenant, his unbreakable commitment to you. He's not promising a life without struggle, but he's promising to be with you through it. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, you'll walk through the flames and come out without even the smell of smoke. Listen, and you'll see he's right there with you. The enemy wants you distracted. He wants you so caught up in the noise, your fears, your to-do list, the opinions of others that you miss God's voice. But you're stronger than that. You're a chosen one, wired to hear him. Tune out the chaos. Focus on his whisper. It's there, guiding you, reminding you that you were made for more than this world's distractions. God's voice is your weapon. It's sharper than any sword, stronger than any obstacle. When David faced Goliath, it wasn't the stone that won the battle. It was the faith he carried, the voice of God that told him, "You are enough." Your Goliath might be doubt, debt, or despair. Listen to God, and you'll find the courage to face it head-on, knowing the victory is already yours. You're standing at a crossroads. One path is the noise of the world, pulling you toward regret, distraction, and missed opportunities. The other is God's voice, leading you to purpose, peace, and power. Every step you take with him is a step toward a life that shines, a life that inspires, a life that fulfills the calling written on your soul. Choose to listen. Choose his path. Think about the woman at the well. She was an outcast, carrying years of shame. But when Jesus spoke, she listened. His words didn't just change her day, they changed her life. She became a voice for truth, a spark that set her village ablaze with faith. Your story isn't over. God's voice can take your past, your pain, and turn it into a testimony that changes everything. Listening to God means trusting his timing. The world says you need answers now, solutions yesterday. But God's voice says, wait, trust, I'm working. Look at Joseph, sold into slavery, thrown into prison. Years passed, but God was speaking the whole time, preparing him for a palace. Your waiting isn't wasted, it's preparation. Listen, and you'll see the palace God's building for you. You're not just a listener, you're a doer. God's voice doesn't just inspire, it activates. When you hear him, you're called to move, to act, to step into the unknown with faith. Like Peter, who stepped out of the boat, you're being called to walk where others fear to tread. His voice is your assurance that you won't sink, no matter how wild the waves. God's speaking about your legacy, not just what you'll achieve, but what you'll leave behind. Every time you listen, you're planting seeds for a future that outlives you. Think of Hannah, who prayed for a son and gave him back to God. Samuel's life changed a nation because she listened. Your obedience today could spark a movement tomorrow. Hear him and plant those seeds. The world will try to drown out his voice with fear. It'll tell you you're not enough, that your dreams are too big, that God's forgotten you. But his voice says, you are mine, I've called you by name. Like Isaiah, who heard God ask, whom shall I send? You're being called to answer. Listen and say, here I am. That's where your purpose begins. You're a chosen one, not because of what you've done, but because of who God says you are. His voice is your birthright, your guide, your power. When you listen, you step into a life that's bigger than you, a life that reflects his glory. Don't let the noise win. Don't let regret take root. Hear him now and watch how your life becomes a living testament to his faithfulness. God's voice is your clarity in the fog. Life throws confusion at you, decisions that feel impossible, paths that seem to twist and turn without end. But when you listen to him, the haze lifts. His words cut through the uncertainty like a beacon, showing you the way forward. You're not meant to stumble blindly. You're meant to walk with purpose, guided by the one who sees every step before you take it. Think of Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem's walls. The task was daunting, enemies mocked him, resources were scarce, and doubt lingered. But God spoke, and Nehemiah listened. Each brick he laid was an act of obedience, a response to that divine call. Your life is your wall, and every choice you make while listening to God builds something lasting. His voice is the blueprint for your restoration. You're a chosen one, wired to hear him even when the world tries to mute his call. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. God's voice doesn't demand flawless faith, it asks for an open heart. When you lean in, you find direction where there was none, peace where there was chaos. His words are the compass that turns your wandering into a journey. Consider Rebecca at the well. She didn't know her future, didn't see the legacy she'd carry. But when God's plan unfolded through a simple act of kindness, she listened. She followed the nudge to water a stranger's camels, and it led her to a destiny tied to nations. Your small moments of obedience, the ones that feel insignificant, are where God's voice shapes your future. The enemy loves to cloud your mind with noise. Fear, comparison, even ambition can drown out God's whisper. But you're stronger than that. You're chosen to rise above the static, to hear the truth that sets you free. Like Elisha, who heard God's voice in the silence after the fire, you're called to find him in the quiet. Tune out the chaos and let his clarity guide you. God's voice is your shield. It guards you against the lies that try to define you. The world might say you're too broken, too late, too small, but he says you're enough. When you listen, those lies lose their grip. Think of Jeremiah, called as a young prophet despite his fears. God's voice told him, "I formed you. I know you." That same voice is speaking to you, reminding you who you were made to be. You've been chosen for a purpose that's bigger than your circumstances. God's not just speaking to get you through today, he's preparing you for tomorrow. Every word he speaks is a seed planted in your heart, ready to grow into something extraordinary. Like the parable of the sower, your job is to let that seed take root. Listen and watch it bloom into a life of impact. Pause for a moment. If this message is stirring your soul, consider a super thanks to keep this truth reaching others. Your support, no matter the size, helps light the way for more chosen ones. And if you're ready to walk this path with others, hit subscribe to join a community of souls hearing God's call. Together, we're amplifying his voice. God's voice is your invitation to rest. Not the kind of rest that's lazy, but the kind that trusts. The world pushes you to strive, to prove yourself, to never stop moving. But God says, "Be still and know that I am God." When you listen, you find peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's the peace Jesus had, sleeping through the storm while the disciples panicked. Think about Lazarus, dead in the tomb. The world saw finality, but Jesus heard God's voice. He called Lazarus out, and death itself obeyed. Your dead places, your lost hopes, your buried dreams aren't the end. God's voice can call them back to life. Listen, and you'll hear him say, "Come forth." Trust that call, and watch what rises from the grave. You're not just hearing God for yourself. His voice through you can change others. Like Deborah, who listened and led a nation to victory, your obedience ripples outward. When you hear him, you become a light for those lost in darkness, a guide for those who've lost their way. Your life becomes a testimony, not just of survival, but of triumph. God's voice is your courage. It's what pushes you to act when fear says stay still. Think of Moses, standing before Pharaoh. He didn't feel ready. His voice shook. His doubts were loud. But God's command was louder. "Go, and I will be with you." That same voice is urging you forward. Listen, and you'll find the strength to face your Pharaoh, whatever it may be. The world will tempt you to ignore him. It'll offer distractions, scrolling, chasing trends, numbing your heart. But God's voice is your wake-up call. It's the alarm that says, this isn't all there is. Like Zacchaeus, who climbed a tree to see Jesus, you're called to rise above the crowd. Listen, and you'll find the courage to step out of the ordinary into the divine. God's speaking about your healing. Not just physical, but emotional, spiritual. Every wound you carry, every scar you hide, He sees them. His voice says, I am your healer. Think of the woman with the issue of blood. She heard Jesus' presence, pushed through the crowd, and touched His hem. Her faith in His voice brought wholeness. Your faith in His words can do the same. You're a chosen one, not because you're flawless, but because you're His. God's voice doesn't require you to earn it. It's already yours. When you listen, you tap into a power that shifts realities. Like John the Baptist, preparing the way in the wilderness, your life can pave the path for others. Hear Him, and you'll become a voice crying out, leading others to truth. God's voice is your map through the unknown. Life feels like a maze, sometimes dead ends, wrong turns, moments you feel lost. But He's not leaving you to wander. His words are the light that shows the way. Think of the Israelites, guided by a pillar of fire. God's voice is your fire, leading you through every desert to the place He's promised. You've been chosen to carry His message, not just to hear it, but to live it. Like Jonah, who finally obeyed after running, your life speaks when you listen. God's voice through you can touch hearts, shift perspectives, even change destinies. Don't underestimate the power of your obedience. It's a spark that can set the world ablaze. God's voice is your assurance. It's the promise that you're never alone, never forsaken. When you listen, you hear Him say, I am with you always. Like Hagar in the desert, seeing God's provision when all seemed lost, you'll find His presence in your lowest moments. Listen, and you'll see He's been there all along, guiding, sustaining, loving. You're not just a listener, you're a vessel. God's voice flows through you, shaping not just your life, but the lives around you. Think of Mary Magdalene, transformed by Jesus' words. She didn't just hear, she became a witness, carrying His truth to the world. Your life, when tuned to His voice, becomes a story that points others to Him. The world will try to pull you back. It'll say, His voice isn't real, that you're imagining things, that faith is foolish. But you know better. You've felt His call, seen His hand, heard His whisper, like Thomas, who doubted until he saw. You're invited to touch the truth. Listen, and your doubts will turn to faith, your questions to certainty. God's voice is your freedom. It breaks the chains of fear, shame, and regret. When you hear Him, you're not bound by what was, you're released into what will be. Think of the paralytic, told by Jesus to rise and walk. His voice didn't just heal a body, it restored a life. Your listening doesn't just change your heart, it transforms your future. You're a chosen one, marked by His voice. Every time you listen, you step closer to the life He designed, a life of purpose, power, and unshakable peace. Don't let the noise win. Don't let distraction steal your destiny. Hear Him now, and watch how His words turn your ordinary moments into divine miracles. God's voice is your awakening. It's the spark that ignites your soul when the world tries to dim your light. You've felt moments where life seemed to stall, where purpose felt distant, like a dream just out of reach. But His voice cuts through that haze, calling you to rise, to remember who you are. It's not just guidance, it's a divine alarm, shaking you from slumber into the fullness of your calling. Think of Ezekiel, in the valley of dry bones. The scene was hopeless death and decay as far as he could see. But God spoke, and Ezekiel listened. He prophesied as he was told, and bones became an army, alive and breathing. Your dry places, your lost hopes, your faded dreams can live again. God's voice is the breath that revives what you thought was gone. Listen and watch life return. You're a chosen one, not by chance, but by design. His voice isn't random. It's personal, tailored to your heart, your path, your purpose. When you hear him, you're not just receiving words, you're unlocking a destiny written before time began. Like Esther, chosen for such a time as this, your life is timed perfectly for his plan. Tune in, and you'll see how every moment aligns. The world will try to bury his voice under layers of doubt. It'll tell you to trust logic, to lean on what you can see, to ignore the unseen. But God's voice is your bridge to the invisible. Think of Abraham, gazing at a sky full of stars. God promised him descendants beyond counting, despite his age, despite the odds. Abraham listened, and his faith became a legacy. Your faith, when you hear him, becomes your legacy too. God's voice is your strength in weakness. When you feel small, inadequate, or overwhelmed, his words lift you. They remind you that your limits don't define you. He does. Look at Moses, stuttering and unsure, yet chosen to lead a nation. God's voice told him, "I will be your mouth." That same voice is speaking to your weaknesses, turning them into power. Listen, and you'll stand taller than you ever thought possible. You've been chosen to hear beyond the surface. The world offers shallow answers, quick fixes, empty promises, but God's voice goes deeper, touching the core of who you are. Like the Samaritan woman at the well, you're invited to drink from a source that never runs dry. Her conversation with Jesus wasn't just talk, it was transformation. Your listening isn't just hearing, it's becoming. The enemy wants you to miss his voice. He'll throw distractions your way, busyness, fear, even comfort that keeps you complacent. But you're wired for more. You're a chosen one, built to hear the divine frequency that cuts through the noise. Think of Samuel, waking in the night to God's call. He didn't understand at first, but he learned to listen. You're learning too, and every moment you hear him brings you closer to your purpose. God's voice is your invitation to boldness. It's the push that says, step out, even when you're scared. Like Peter, called to walk on water, you're being asked to trust his voice over the storm. The waves were real, the wind was fierce, but Jesus' words were stronger. Your fears are real, but his voice is stronger still. Listen, and take the step you've been hesitating to make. You're not just hearing for yourself, you're hearing for others. God's voice through you can shift lives, mend hearts, spark hope. Think of Deborah, sitting under her palm tree, listening to God's wisdom. Her words led armies, saved nations. Your words, when rooted in his voice, can lead others to their own victories. Listen, and become a beacon for those still searching. God's voice is your anchor in change. Life shifts, jobs end, relationships evolve, seasons turn, but his words never waver. They're the constant that holds you steady. Like Noah, building an ark amid ridicule, you're called to trust his voice when everything around you feels unstable. His instructions are your foundation, keeping you grounded no matter what comes. You're a chosen one, marked to hear what others miss. His voice isn't just advice, it's a revelation. When you listen, you see things differently. The problems that seemed impossible shrink. The dreams that felt too big grow closer. Like Elisha's servant, whose eyes were opened to see God's army. Your listening opens your eyes to his power at work in your life. The world will try to pull you into its rhythm, fast, frantic, fleeting. But God's voice sets a different pace. It's steady, unhurried, eternal. Think of Jesus in the wilderness, tempted by the enemy's quick fixes. He listened to God's truth instead and walked out unshaken. Your temptations, doubt, shortcuts, despair lose their power when you hear his voice. Choose it over the noise. God's voice is your key to freedom, not the kind the world offers, tied to money or status, but a freedom that comes from knowing you're his. Like Paul, singing in chains, you can find joy in the hardest moments when you listen. His voice breaks the bonds of fear, shame, and regret, setting you free to live fully, boldly, authentically. You've been chosen to carry his voice into the world, not as a preacher or a prophet, unless that's your call, but as you living, breathing, walking in his truth. Think of Mary, who pondered God's words in her heart. Her quiet obedience birthed a Savior. Your quiet listening can birth miracles too, in your life and beyond. Hear him and let your life speak. The enemy will try to make you question his voice. He'll whisper, "Did God really say that?" But you know his tone. You felt it in the moments of peace, the flashes of clarity, the strength that comes from nowhere. Like Eve in the garden, you're faced with a choice. Trust the serpent's lies or God's truth. Listen, and you'll know which voice to follow. God's voice is your map to abundance, not just wealth, but a life overflowing with purpose, love, and joy. Think of Joseph, who heard God through dreams in a pit, a prison, a palace. His listening led him from slavery to leadership. Your listening can lead you from lack to overflow, from struggle to victory. Hear him and step into the fullness he's promised. You're a chosen one, not because you're perfect, but because you're his. His voice is your birthright, your guide, your strength. When you listen, you align with a plan bigger than your own, a story written by the Creator himself. Like David, dancing before the ark, you're called to live with abandon, trusting his voice to lead you. Don't hold back. Hear him and let your life shine. God's voice is your compass in the wilderness. Life can feel like an uncharted desert, barren, disorienting, with no clear path forward. But his voice is the guide that points you to the oasis. It's not a vague feeling. It's a precise direction, leading you through uncertainty to a place of provision. When you listen, you find water in the driest moments, hope in the bleakest seasons. Think of the Israelites, wandering for years after Egypt. They grumbled, doubted, lost sight of the promise. But God spoke to Moses, guiding them step by step. His voice led them through hunger, thirst, and fear to a land of milk and honey. Your wilderness, your struggles, your waiting isn't aimless. God's voice is mapping your way to abundance. Listen and follow the path he's carving. You're a chosen one, set apart to hear him in ways others might miss. His voice isn't just for the big decisions, it's for the daily steps, the quiet choices that shape your destiny. Like Philip, sent to a desert road to meet one man, your obedience to his nudge can change lives. That Ethiopian he met carried the gospel to a nation. Your listening could spark a movement you can't yet see. The world will try to drown his voice with urgency. It demands you act now, decide now, succeed now. But God's voice teaches patience. It's the assurance that his timing is perfect, even when it feels slow. Think of Simeon, waiting years for the Messiah. When he finally held Jesus, his waiting turned to worship. Your listening turns delays into divine appointments. Trust his rhythm, and you'll see. God's voice is your shield against despair. When life feels heavy, when hope seems to slip away, His words hold you up. They remind you that your story isn't over. Like Job, who lost everything yet heard God in the whirlwind, you're called to listen through the pain. His voice didn't just restore Job's life, it multiplied it. Your losses aren't the end, they're the prelude to restoration. You're chosen to hear His truth above the lies. The enemy whispers failure, unworthiness, defeat. But God's voice declares victory, value, purpose. Think of Hannah, barren and mocked, yet praying in the temple. God heard her, and she heard Him. Her son Samuel became a prophet who changed a nation. Your prayers, when tuned to His voice, birth miracles that echo beyond your lifetime. If this message is speaking to you, consider a super thanks to help carry this truth to others. Your support keeps this light shining for chosen ones everywhere. And if you're ready to join thousands of souls walking this path, hit subscribe. Together, we're building a community that hears and follows God's call. God's voice is your invitation to trust, not in your own strength, but in His promises. The world says, rely on yourself, your skills, your hustle, but God says, lean on me. Like Daniel, who prayed despite the threat of death, your trust in His voice defies the odds. His courage came from hearing God, not from his own power. Your courage comes from the same source. Listen and stand fearless. You're not just hearing words, you're receiving vision. God's voice paints a picture of what's possible, even when your eyes see only limits. Think of Elisha, surrounded by an enemy army. His servant saw doom, but Elisha heard God and saw chariots of fire. When you listen, your perspective shifts. You see solutions where others see problems, hope where others see despair. The enemy wants you to doubt his voice. He'll say it's your imagination, your wishful thinking. But you know the difference. You've felt that quiet certainty, that unexplainable peace. Like Mary, who believed the angel's impossible promise, you're called to trust what seems too big. Her faith birthed a savior. Your faith, when you hear him, births the impossible in your life. God's voice is your strength to forgive. It's easy to hold on to hurt, to let bitterness take root. But his words call you to release, to heal, to move forward. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, yet choosing to forgive. He heard God's plan through the pain, and it led to reconciliation and provision. Your forgiveness, guided by his voice, can turn wounds into bridges. You're a chosen one, wired to hear him in the chaos. Life throws curveballs, unexpected changes, sudden losses. But his voice is the thread that holds your story together. Like Ruth, who followed God's nudge to a foreign land, your listening turns uncertainty into destiny. Her choice led to a lineage that included Jesus. Your choices, when you hear him, shape a legacy just as powerful. God's voice is your call to action. It's not enough to hear you're meant to move. Think of Nehemiah, who didn't just grieve over Jerusalem's ruins. He acted on God's word. He rebuilt, he led, he transformed. Your listening isn't passive. It's the spark that ignites your purpose. Hear him and take the step he's showing you, even if it feels small. The world will try to pull you into its current, rushing, relentless, empty. But God's voice sets you apart. It's the anchor that keeps you grounded, the wind that lifts you higher. Like Elijah, fed by ravens in a famine, you're sustained by his words when everything else fails. Listen, and you'll find provision in places you never expected. You're chosen to carry his voice into the ordinary. Not every moment is dramatic. some are quiet, mundane, but God speaks there too. Think of David, anointed as king while still a shepherd. His daily tasks, guided by God's voice, prepared him for a throne. Your everyday life, when you listen, becomes the training ground for your destiny. God's voice is your key to resilience. Life will test you, setbacks, rejections, failures, but His words give you the strength to rise again. Like Peter, who denied Jesus, yet heard His call to feed my sheep. You're not defined by your stumbles. Listen, and you'll find the grace to stand, to try again, to become who He says you are. You're a chosen one, not because you're flawless, but because you're His. His voice is your lifeline, your guide, your power. When you listen, you step into a story bigger than your own, a story of purpose, healing, and impact. Like Moses, who heard God at the burning bush, you're standing on holy ground. Hear Him, and let your life become a testament to His faithfulness. God's voice is your light in the shadows. Life can feel like a maze of uncertainty, where doubt and fear cast long, dark shapes. But His voice pierces through, a steady glow that reveals the path ahead. It's not just a sound, it's a beacon, showing you the way when confusion threatens to pull you under. When you listen, you find clarity where there was chaos, courage where there was fear. Think of Paul, blinded on the road to Damascus. The world saw a man struck down, but God's voice saw a messenger raised up. That moment of listening transformed a persecutor into an apostle. Your moments of darkness, your struggles, your doubts are not the end. They're the stage for God's voice to call you into a new purpose. Hear Him and watch your shadows turn to light. You're a chosen one, hand-picked to hear His call above the noise. The world will try to overwhelm you with distractions, endless tasks, fleeting trends, nagging worries. But God's voice is your anchor, grounding you in truth. Like Martha, busy with serving, you're invited to choose the better part, sitting at His feet, listening. That choice shifts everything, turning busyness into meaning. God's voice is your promise of renewal. Life wears you down, stress, setbacks, the weight of expectations, but His words breathe life back into you. Think of Ezekiel's dry bones, lifeless until God spoke. His voice can revive your weary heart, your faded dreams. When you listen, you're not just surviving, you're being remade, stronger, brighter, ready for what's next. The enemy will try to silence him. He'll whisper that God's voice is too faint, too far, too uncertain. But you know better. You've felt that still, small voice in moments of quiet, in flashes of hope. Like Elijah, hiding in a cave, you're called to hear God in the whisper, not the storm. Listen, and you'll find His presence closer than you ever imagined. You're chosen to live His words, not just hear them. God's voice isn't meant to stay in your head, it's meant to shape your hands, your steps, your life. Think of James and John, leaving their nets to follow Jesus. Their listening turned fishermen into world changers. Your listening can turn your ordinary days into a legacy of faith, impact, and love. God's voice is your victory. It's the assurance that no battle is final, no obstacle too big. Like David facing Goliath, you're not fighting alone. His voice equips you with strength beyond your own. When you hear Him, you step into battles knowing the outcome is already secure. Listen and face your giants with a faith that topples them. This is your moment, chosen one. God's speaking, and He's not vague. He's calling you to stop ignoring, to start listening, to trust His plan. His voice is your guide to a life of purpose, power and peace. Don't let regret steal what he's offering. If this message has moved you, type 777 inches, the comments to declare you're ready to hear him. And if you're stirred to support this work, a super thanks keeps this truth spreading to souls like yours. Join thousands of chosen ones, hit subscribe, and let's walk this path together. Hear his voice, and let it lead you to a future that shines with his glory.